During her life of 96 years and a reign of more than 70, she was the most famous woman on the planet. The late Queen Elizabeth II met everyone from Marilyn Monroe to Donald Trump and had more stories than could ever be told. But one writer is attempting to do just that in a new biography that's had everyone talking. It's called A Voyage Around the Queen. Please welcome Craig Brown. Welcome. I mean, it is fascinating, and fascinated by the title. Why is it called A Voyage Around? Because they're called, you know, biography of the late Queen.
There have been, I think, over 1,000 biographies of her, some of which are good and many of which are bad. They tend to be rather dull because they sort of trudge through her life year by year and go into every sort of Canadian tour she ever did and that kind of thing. Mine's more a voyage because it's less a biography and more about her effect on everyone else and everyone's meetings with her and how nervous people got and how they spoke gibberish to her.
Or even, which you did, didn't you? Was it the first time you met her?
Well, the only time I met her. When I was 19, I wasn't expecting to meet her. I was at a friend's parents' party. I think it was 25th wedding anniversary. And I was just crossing the room and suddenly the father of the friend said, "Hey, would you like to be presented?" And I'd had one too many by that. I mean, sort of normal student amount. I used to wake up every 3 o'clock every morning for about a fortnight thinking what I'd said. My friend's father said, "Oh, Craig's studying drama," which I was doing in those days. And she said, "Oh, very interesting." And within seconds, I was telling her all about this boring East German playwright Bertolt Brecht and his theory of alienation. I can't even remember what the theory is now. But I went on, and her way of stopping conversations was saying, "Oh, very interesting," and then taking a step back. But I thought that, oh, yeah, she's really interested. So I went on and on about Brecht.
You didn't read the room.
And every time she stepped back, I would step forward.
Oh, no!
Anyway, I don't like to think of it. I wish I hadn't put it in the book.
But it is interesting when so many people tell stories about, you know, I was so nervous. I mean, we're talking, you know, famous actors, performers, people that are used to being on stage, saying, when I met the Queen, I fell to pieces. And you talk about saying maybe she thought people were idiots.
I think there is a strong case to think that she did think everyone was deranged, because even really, like Michelle Obama... I mean, I had a friend who went to... She had these regular lunches for bigwigs, about sort of 10 or 12 sort of captains of industry. He said that before he went in, everyone, a courtier said, "Would you like to spend a penny? We do advise it," because people have accidents on meeting her.
Royal effect, wow.
And you mentioned Marilyn Monroe, who's almost her twin. I think they were born within 6 weeks of each other. But you'd have thought Marilyn would be quite, you know, tough and show-busy. But she was so nervous, she licked all her lipstick off. And you can see on the YouTube thing of her shaking. Joan Crawford met her at the same time in the same lineup and said she was more scared than she'd ever been in her life.
Janet, did you receive your OB from the Queen?
You wouldn't.
CBE.
CBE, sorry, CBE.
I was scared because you go into Buckingham Palace and they give you all this all the protocol, all the rules, all the regulations, and you've already had the written rules and regulations, and now you're getting it from footmen. And all I remember is going up and thinking how tiny she was, and I had boots on and quite a nice dress but no hat, and I put my hand out, and then you know when your time's up, because she said, "Oh, well, you've done this and you've done that," and I took that, like you, as an indication that she wanted to know. So I started babbling on about my career, like, oh, I started in radio and then I went on television and then I edited a national newspaper, and I could see her face saying, "Oh, get off."
Yeah, she was going, "Oh, yeah." I mean, there was an odd thing with conversations with the Queen because the protocol was that she would ask the questions and you couldn't ask one of hers. So conversations were all kind of lopsided in that way.
Yeah.
And very few people can remember what... They can always remember what they said to her, but not what she said to them. Often it was because she was just saying, "Oh, very interesting."
Very interesting. I was fascinated, actually. You talked about her funeral, said you became almost obsessed by watching the live feed, not the funeral, sorry, of when she was lying in state, and the thousands and thousands of people who were filing past. And I felt the same. It's just I couldn't stop watching it.
How we grieved
her. How we grieved her.
Yes, and I remember saying to friends of mine who were not monarchists at all, but I said, just watch this for 10 minutes and you'll be completely glued, because you saw how profound it was, regardless of what you thought about the monarchy. She stood for everyone's sort of mother or grandmother, or even their own death. You know, everyone was confronting mortality in some strange way.
Because she'd always been there.
She'd always been.
She's always been.
No one.
Felt
well,
part of the
you'd have had to be about 102 to remember a time when she wasn't there, because she was famous from the moment she was born. It was headline news.
I remember reading in your book one of the great, you know, how everybody prepared for her coronation and the big day. And, of course, she was so young to go through such a huge ceremony. And on that day, I was 6, and my mother decided we were going to go and see the royal coach. So all I remember is going on the underground up to the park, and it was not very nice weather, and this gold thing went past in about 2 seconds. That was it. But in your book, you paint such a good portrait of the chaotic scenes backstage, as it were, and that Cecil Beaton went to the Abbey really, really early because he had to photograph it and sketch it and everything. And he put his sandwiches in his hat.
People were hiding little miniatures of whiskey because you had to, you know, under their top hats and things like that. Yes, I like that chapter because things like Ringo Starr when he was, however old he was, 7, in a fancy dress thing. And just along the road from here, kind of grim area, Rillington Place, where a serial killer had just taken place, but they were trying to put on a children's party. And I like these panoramas.
Let's talk about Donald Trump, because he claimed that he was the Queen's favourite American president. And you begged to differ, and he wasn't best pleased with you, was he?
No. Well, I mean, I obviously can't name my source, but it's someone I know quite well and trust. He was... Oh, I should have... I'm not a normal investigative journalist. Anyway,
that person.
Whoever it was, they were sitting next to the Queen at lunch, and she said that she thought he was a very rude man. Also, she said that she was interested in his relationship with Melania and said they must have some arrangement. So I just put that...
It was a good judge of character.
I sort of sneaked it into the book, but then it became a headline story around the world. And the next day, Donald Trump was filmed, you know, refuting these allegations. He said, many people have told me the Queen said to them, Donald Trump was my favourite president. So it's up to people to choose who to believe,
and
me or Donald.
And didn't he call you a sleazebag for writing it?
And a phony, yeah. I mean, I then got... You know, you get rather hooked on this abuse from an ex-president. And so I really wanted him to carry on the next day and the next day, but alas, no.
Yeah.
He's forgotten about it.
In the book, you talked about the Queen's fear for the longevity of the monarchy. I'd wondered, what was your opinion on that?
I think it's slightly more precarious than it was when she took over, though, of course, she'd had the Duke and Duchess of Windsor and that thing. I think it's much more based, slightly because she had such a virtuous life, and we're now in a world of showbiz, I think it's much more based on the virtue of the person. And so, say something had happened to Prince Charles, you know, when he was 10, and Prince Andrew might have been on the throne. I think that would, if you get a real bad hat, that would render it precarious. In a way that it would have survived Henry VIII, or that kind of, you know, he could execute his wives.
Do you think it will survive with King Charles?
Yes. And
he as popular?
I'd guess that William is more like a kind of, will be more like a Scandinavian, sort of low-key monarch, and they've tried to shed the extra royals. And then now there are, of course, overseas royals and freelance royals. But, the essential... I think it's wise to just keep a small...
Why do you think all these, like a quite large percentage of people are having dreams or have dreamt about the Queen?
Well, I mean, in my book, someone estimated 1/3 of British people have had dreams about the Queen, and they tend to go along the same lines. The Queen is the sort of conscience, and I mean, I put 2 of my own dreams in there, and it's always either I was so really badly dressed, or I was bringing mud along the floor, or so you're always doing something wrong. She stands for respectability. She stands for respectability and doing the right thing. But other people... I mean, Picasso used to have sexual dreams about the Queen and Princess Margaret. And so she... And that's really what I was interested in the book, how she inhabits our psyche, you know, that whatever you think of her, you can't get her out of your head.
Well, listen, Craig, it's absolutely fascinating. So many stories we haven't got time to cover, which we wanted to, but the book is out, A Voyage Around the Queen. It is absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for coming and telling us about it. Craig Brown, everybody.